Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tom's Gadget Garage. Today I am here with the Segway Ninebot Max G3 to see if this scooter has what it takes to make it up our endurance hill climb. Now if all goes right, we will be going over 1,900 feet in elevation gain over the course of approximately 17.5 miles, of which 9.5 miles is almost continuous incline. So today's ride is not only going to be a test of this scooter's hill climb ability, but also of its endurance and whether or not we're going to have enough juice to make it up to the top. You know, the battery on this Ninebot Max G3 is a 48 volt, 12.75 amp hour, 597 watt hour capacity battery, which in the most ideal conditions in sport mode, you know, it should be able to take us up to 25 miles of range with a 165-pound rider. Well, today I weigh in at approximately 200 pounds. And so, in sport mode, with the top speed set to 20 miles an hour, will we have enough to make it to all three of our lookout points? Now, if you follow my content for a while, you'll know that I've taken the Ninebot Max G2 up this particular course probably a dozen times since the summer of 2023, and at the very beginning, it had no issues at all making it to the top. But ever since they rolled out some of their firmware updates, it's been a struggle. You know, no longer has enough power to make it through the steepest section at the top, and actually tends to overheat on the way up. So anyways, we'll see how this scooter does. It's got significantly more power, 850 nominal watts of power, and is capable of cranking out up to 2,000 watts of peak power. Now, I will be recording today's ride with Garmin GPS, which is what I use for all of my electric scooter and e-bike rides. That way, we have an accurate and consistent way to compare the results of this scooter to some of its competitors. Now, right now, we're cruising around at about just shy of 20 miles an hour. And looking at the watts coming up this incline, I'm seeing about 1,200 watts. I'm also going to be keeping a very close eye on the temperature of this scooter. Right now it's showing 27 degrees Celsius. Because like I said, with the Ninebot Max G2, we have run into overheating situations. And so we want to try and avoid that today. On your left. But right now we're cruising up. But as I was mentioning earlier, I do have the top speed set to 20 miles an hour. That should give us the best bet of making it to all three lookout points. Looking at our battery right now, we're sitting at around 79% at just shy of 3 miles up. But based on these speeds, we're actually making it up quite a bit quicker than we did on the Ninebot Max G2. Now, it'll be interesting to see how much battery we've got left once we get to our first lookout point, which is going to be about 5.8 miles from the starting point. You know, it's about 2.5 miles from where we're at right now. That'll give us a good indication of the likelihood of us making it to the second and third lookout points. So what's amazing about this is that, you know, we're making it up relatively quickly right now, but that's also a little bit scary because I'm not sure how that's going to impact our ability to make it to the top today. We're already at 71%, so that battery's dropping quick. Temperatures 31 degrees Celsius. We're cranking out about 1,100 watts right now. One thing that this scooter has going for it is the fact that it does have regenerative braking. So on the way back down the hill today, we'll definitely take advantage of that. So right now we are going into what I call the shadow of the mountain. This is a grueling hill climb stretch here. As you can see straight ahead and to the left. I mean, that is a long, continuous stretch of incline. So this is what's usually responsible for eating up a good chunk of our battery before we get into the fun stuff. Throttle's all the way in. We're still maintaining about 19 miles an hour. On your left. Yeah, this scooter is doing really well. Reminds me of the Segway ZT3 Pro. That scooter also did a phenomenal job coming up this mountain. We did not make it up to all three lookout points, unfortunately. We got very close, but I was concerned that we wouldn't have enough battery. Now, in retrospect, could it have made it? It's definitely possible. But one of the things that I worry about is, you know, coming up this mountain, if I run out of battery near the top, you know, I'm 9.5 miles away from the starting point. And today the road is closed. You know, Sundays this time But the morning, at least on Sundays, the road is closed to automobile traffic, so it's not like I can phone a friend and say, hey, come pick me up, you know. I'm stuck up there. And, you know, you might think to yourself, oh, well, it's just downhill. You just coast all the way down. It's not continuous downhill. There's some uphill stretches and stuff like that, and so I'm not interested in pushing scooters for hours upon hours, you know. I'd rather coast back down. As you can see, those are the antennas up there. We'll be more or less on their level once we get to our third lookout point today, if we make it that far. We got 60% battery remaining, by the way. And we, right about now, are crossing the 5-mile mark. So 5 miles, 60% battery remaining. Scooter temperature is bumped up to 35 degrees Celsius. I think it's around, at least on the Ninebot Max G2, it's around 50, 51 Celsius where it starts overheating. So suspension so far is actually doing a very good job of absorbing a lot of the cracks in the road. It's probably hard to see on camera, but some of these are pretty gnarly. And so this hydraulic suspension, both in the rear and the front, are doing a good job of eating that up. Now, when we come down the mountain today, we'll have ample opportunity to test out the brakes. Now, this thing's got dual disc brakes. It's also got electronic regenerative braking, of course, in that rear motor. So we'll definitely be taking full advantage of that, but it'll be a good opportunity to test out the brakes. The Ninebot Max G2 had a front drum brake, you know, which is, you know, fine for, you know, riding around on flat ground. If all that scooter had was a drum brake, though, I would be very concerned. But thankfully, it also has a very powerful electronic braking mechanism in the rear motor, which, you know, gives that scooter a decent amount of braking power. All right, folks, we are pulling into our first lookout point. This is going to be Dobbins Lookout. And right now, let's see, right when we get to the top, we're at about 5.8 miles so far, with 54% battery remaining. All right, folks, this is our first lookout point. Dobbins Lookout, 2,330 feet in elevation, 710 meters. As you can see, beautiful view of the Phoenix Metro. Got downtown Phoenix out there, all the surrounding mountains. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and head on over to our next lookout point. Something else to mention about this scooter is that so far it's, you know, been very good, you know, in terms of handling coming up this mountain. Obviously, we'll have a better opportunity to put that to the test coming down the mountain. But what's nice about this Max G3 is that it does have that caster in the front wheel. So the axle is actually offset from the line of the stem and front fork, which gives it that caster effect, which means it's going to have really good straight line stability and helps prevent things like speed wobbles. So makes it a very comfortable ride, very similar to what we see on the ZT3 Pro and scooters like the VMAX VX4. We've got, I think it's about a mile to our next lookout point with a lot of hills, so we'll see what we're doing battery-wise there. Coming through this section, yeah, we're still able to maintain about 18, 19 miles an hour. I see 14, 15, 1600, 1700 watts of power right now. So the scooter's definitely putting in some work, getting close to that 2000 watts of peak power. So as you can imagine, a test like this is outside of the realms of what most people are going to encounter, you know, on their regular usage of this scooter. But I always like taking these things out on a little adventure, see what they're capable of. And that's what a test like this is really designed to do, is, you know, expose some of the vulnerabilities in these scooters and some of their limitations. You know, if you know you can make it, you know, 17 and a half miles on a windy mountain road, you know, you might be able to make it up some other stuff that you're considering. And so it's the whole reason why I do these tests. We are now approaching our second lookout point. This here is Buena Vista Lookout. Go ahead and pull into here. As you can see, more fantastic views. Another perspective on the valley. Nice and quiet. You know, you can hear birds and get away from the hustle and bustle of the city. Anyways, second lookout point accomplished. There's our glorious Ninebot Max G3. So far holding up pretty good. We're at about 7.5 miles right now. We've got 40% battery remaining. Scooter temperature 41 degrees Celsius. So temperature is creeping up, so we'll keep an eye out on that. But so far, so good. I know Segway's made multiple improvements to the heat dissipation properties of this scooter based on what their engineers were saying in some of the comments on some of the CES videos I published. So yeah, we're putting that to the test. Anyways, let's head on up to our next lookout point. All right, so we are now on our way over to our third lookout point, which is Gila Valley Lookout. It's about 2 miles from our current location, which might not sound like a lot, but between where we're at right now and that lookout point, we've got some pretty aggressive hill climbs. So we'll see if we've got enough juice in the tank to make it up there. What I want to be very cognizant of is that I also need to make it back down the mountain. So I want to make sure that I've got enough battery in the tank to do that. And as you can see straight ahead, I mean, this road is snaking up. Throttles all the way in. We're still able to maintain about 20 miles an hour. That's another thing to think about, is that as you wear the battery down, you're going to get less voltage, right? Voltage goes down as that battery wears down, which means less output to the motors, less torque, less acceleration, reduced ability to hit higher speeds. So that's something else to factor in. It's not just a matter of having enough battery, but being able to, crank out enough voltage to make it up. So this is going to be a super steep section that we're going into. I call this the ridge, and we're heading into that right now. It's another drain on the battery. Here we go. As you can see, road is snaking up ahead as we go up this ridge. Throttles all the way in. And then, man, this scooter is just powering up. So this, see, 1,600 watts of peak power. 1,700 watts of power coming up that. And so, that's easy for this scooter. The Ninebot Max G2 would come to a crawl in that section. And we just powered right through that, without issue. But that took about 4% of battery away from us. We're sitting at 36 right now. Another test that I took this scooter on was our extreme hill climb test. So if you haven't caught that, that's when I take this thing up over a 23% grade. That's like the ultimate hill climb test. And I got some pretty surprising results. I'll be sure to include a link to that down below. I've also done our feature overview and first impressions ride. And then in the coming weeks, we'll do our official range test on the same course that I test all my scooters and bikes on. There's the antennas there, as you can see. In a moment, we'll be more or less on their level if we can make it through this last section. Let's see, what we did is 43 degrees Celsius, so temperature slowly creeping up. 32% battery. Throttles all the way in. We're slowing down about 18 miles an hour, and we got a really steep section up ahead. This is going to be the steepest section. If we can make it through that, we are home free. Throttles all the way in, folks. On your left. All right, so things are getting a little slow, and I've got some kind of clicking noise in the back. I'll have to take a look at that in a moment, but we're slowing down. We got through that section, no problem. Another little steep section up ahead, and we're home free. 11 miles an hour. Okay, we're snaking through. Oh, about 1100 watts. I'm gonna pull up to the side here. I'm getting some kind of noise from the rear wheel. It's like a clicking. What is that? It's probably a rock. Hold on a second. All right, so we made it up. This is gonna be where I take a look at what is going on here. What on earth is that noise? I don't see anything in the wheel. Anyways, I'm not sure what that is. And, you know, I'm not gonna investigate it too far right now. But anyways, all right, so I don't know what that clicking is. I'm gonna take a closer look once we get to the top here. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but it's like clicking with every rotation of that tire. All right, last little stretch here, South Mountain Preserve, Gila Valley Lookout. We are here, folks. As you can see, beautiful views of the valley. Quick update on this Max G3. I do have that clicking coming out of that rear motor. I don't know what it is. Nothing stuck in there. Seems to be coming right from the hub where you have the axle and disc brake assembly, and anyways, it clicks at a certain point with every turn. So anyways, I don't know what that is, but I'm not going to be taking this apart up here. Hopefully we can make it back down without some kind of crazy failure or something. Definitely not something we want barreling down the mountain. But anyways, there's those antennas. We're more or less on their level now. And from a battery perspective, we're sitting at 26%. And we've got 45 degrees for the temperature. And we're about 9.4 miles up this mountain. So we're gonna go ahead and head back down, see if we can make it back in one piece. I really don't know what that clicking sound is. That is really unfortunate because we made it up beautifully. Never had something like this happen on a scooter coming up here. Hopefully it's something simple. All right, so 26% battery remaining. We're gonna see how well this regen does. You know, taking us back down the rest of the mountain. We got about 8 miles to our starting point. So I'm using regen right now as much as possible. We've got gravity taking us down. I'm showing about 400 or 500 watts of power going back into the battery. Almost 600 now. Come around this turn. As soon as you hit the brakes, so that wattage drops. So you're no longer putting energy back into the battery. We'll see how we end this ride percentage-wise and give you a good idea of how much charge this thing puts back in. All right, there are sections where I'm gonna have to use throttle because we're slowing down too much. I might consider putting it into weak. I'm not sure. Anyways, anybody else get that clicking noise out of their motor? Let me know in the comment section below. I didn't have that issue with the ZT3 Pro or any other scooter I've taken up here. And you know, at first I thought, oh, maybe there's like some debris in there, maybe some zip tie or something came undone and it's clicking against that. And all right, so we just crossed the 10-mile mark. Still got 26% battery remaining. Scooter's still at about 45 degrees Celsius. I think we'll make it back no problem with the regen. You know, Segway Ninebot Max G3 never had an issue getting us back to our starting point, so I can't imagine we're going to run into that here. All right, coming back up the ridge. Quite the hike up this. 1,200 watts of power. We made it up. There's Camelback Mountain straight ahead. And here we go, another downhill stretch. Taking advantage of gravity and regen right now. Normally, if I run into a situation where I hear some strange noise, you know, I'll stop riding the scooter, but I'm unfortunately not in that situation to do that right now because I am so far away from my starting point, you know. The road's closed, there's nobody here to come rescue me. All right, clear on the right, clear on the left. But I will say, coming into these curves, this is a very smooth ride. Very nice. So a combination of the suspension, that front caster, makes for a nice, comfortable ride down this mountain. We're still holding strong at 26%, and we're about 1.5 miles away from where we just left, the top of the mountain. So looks like regen's helping us out a bit here. Obviously, I'm getting kind of tied up in this clicking sound, but you know, this scooter making it to the top, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. Max G2 now, it gets to about, it gets close to the top, but then you gotta, you know, walk the scooter up through that steep section, and then it's good to go. But you've also got, with that latest firmware 1.11.1, that overheating issue, and so I have a video, I'll include it in the description below, but you know, we had multiple instances of overheating warnings and stuff like that. So we didn't have any of that with this scooter, with this Ninebot Max G3, so that's really impressive. And it was able to, you know, get us through those steep sections with flying colors where, you know, the Ninebot Max G2 in a lot of those sections would slow down to 3-4 miles an hour or stop completely. So really solid performance. All right, got a little bit of a hill climb here. This is a kind of a long, gradual stretch. Help us eat through our precious remaining battery. We're sitting at 22% right now. So it is going down, but once we get through this section, we'll have some relief on the downside. And then there's one other section where there's a slight incline, and then it's 100% downhill from there. Here's some bumpy sections here. Suspension's doing as good as it can, absorbing that. There's tiny bits of bottoming out on some of the more aggressive stuff, but still very good. All right, here we go. Nice little downhill stretch. Something I will say is that the regen on this scooter isn't as strong as that on the ZT3 Pro or the Ninebot Max G2. You know, it's got standard and weak, and it just feels a lot stronger on the ZT3 Pro. Now, I know Segway does play around with the regen settings in some of their firmware updates, so that maybe we'll get some stronger regen in the future, but it's just not as strong. But for this, I'll tell you right now, coming down this mountain, it is probably a little too strong. It's keeping us from, you know, maintaining speed. It actually does a good job of slowing us down. I'd like a little less of that, so I might switch this over to weak. That way we can maintain a higher speed, but still recharge our battery. Oh, it looks like they filled the pothole. That's nice. There's a couple potholes up here, and it looks like they filled out one of them. So, looking at the display, it says that we have about 6.8 miles of estimated range, and we're about 4 miles away from our starting point, so I think we're in a relatively good position. Here's the downhill stretch. We'll see how this thing does coming into some of the curves in the roads here, but so far it's a very confidence-inspiring ride. Very smooth. That's one of the nice things about having this hydraulic suspension, is that you can come into these turns even if you've got some of the cracks in the road and it just eats them up. Beautiful views up ahead. Yeah, this scooter's got very nice handling. No squirreliness or anything. I mean, you can see my handlebars. Very stable. Here's another curve we're gonna roll into. Very smooth. You know, when they come out with that optional battery pack, I'm definitely gonna pick one of those up and do all these same tests, but I'm excited because with how smooth this scooter rides coming down this mountain, and I'll set it to sport mode at the top speed set to 28 miles an hour and just coast through this. You know, right now we've got it capped at 20 miles an hour just because we want to be able to make it up and down the mountain today, and that's essentially the test that I do with all my other scooters. So for consistency's sake, we're keeping it at 20, but with that extended battery pack, yeah, I'd definitely be open to letting it rip up here. Little quick battery checking. We're at 14.5 miles right now on this ride. You got 20% battery remaining. Throttle's all the way in, but we're barely using power right now because we've got a decline that we're going down on. I'm just gonna say it, you know, this ride is buttery smooth. Segway definitely nailed the suspension on this scooter. I mean, it was already fantastic with the G2, but with this G3, I mean, that's just cream on the top. All right, pulled over here for a second, give you an idea of what we just came up. So as you can see, that's South Mountain straight ahead. You got all the antennas and everything. That's what we just climbed with this commuter scooter. And it did a fantastic job. Obviously, we've still got a couple miles to our starting point, but yeah, I mean, that is impressive performance. No overheating, no kind of errors or anything. We've got the clicking in the back. I'm not sure what that is. That's actually quite annoying, but I'm glad we were able to make it down most of this mountain so far without running into any additional issues. But as you can see, mountain landscape all the way around. And brought to you by the Segway Ninebot Max G3. Let's see if it's still making that clicking. I don't hear the clicking right now. Okay, so moving this thing around, I don't hear the clicking at all. So let's get going. Okay, the clicking is gone, folks. That is interesting. So we had the click, now we don't have the click. That's kind of exciting and disconcerting at the same time. But that click is gone. Let me pull over to the side. Let me slow down a little bit. See if we get the click. The click is gone. I'll be damned. That is crazy. It has completely disappeared. We'll see if that's the case in a couple miles when we get back to our starting point and we download the data and see how we did today. Still holding strong at 20%, folks. So we were at 26 at the top, and since then we've made about a little over 6 miles. So 6% in 6 miles, that's pretty good in my book. So that comes to show, you know, how regen works, putting power back into that battery. We are now pulling into our starting area, and I'll go ahead and download all the data, and we'll take a look at how we did with elevation gain and everything today. All right, folks, so there you have it. That was our ride up South Mountain with the Ninebot Max G3. On this particular ride, we went 17.09 miles. We had an average moving speed of 18.3 miles an hour, which I think is significantly faster than we've done on some other commuter scooters like the Ninebot Max G2. We had a top speed of 22.7 miles an hour. Elevation gain, 1,867 feet. And we were cruising around for about an hour and 9 minutes. So overall, this scooter did a really good job today, and I don't hear any more of that clicking. I'll take you in a little bit closer here. You know, when I move this scooter around, there's no clicking at all whatsoever. So maybe it was some debris that I didn't see. I don't know, you know, it sounded strange, like kind of metal on metal clicking, but I don't have any of that clicking anymore. But anyways, really impressive performance out of this scooter today. We made it all the way up, we made it all the way down, and we've got 17% battery remaining in the tank. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. Happy to address those in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning into Tom's Gadget Garage. We'll see you next time.